Welcome everyone to this month's crowd conversation, A Brighter Bing Youth Illuminating Circularity and Reuse. My name's Jenny Minner. I'm an associate professor in the Department of City and Regional Planning at Cornell University. I'm also a proud partner in CROWD, which is Circularity, Reuse, and Zero Waste Development. And I'm so pleased that you could join us for this webinar. You're going to be hearing directly from high school students in Binghamton, New York, and Cornell students, all of whom are involved in the Cornell Urban Research to Action Youth program. So before we get started, I want to let you know we are recording the webinar today. Also, I'd like to read the land acknowledgement for Cornell University. Cornell is located on the traditional homelands of the Gayakono, the Kyuko Nation. The Gayakono are members of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, an alliance of 6 sovereign nations with a historic and contemporary presence on this land. The Confederacy precedes the establishment of Cornell University, New York State, and the United States of America. We acknowledge the painful history of the Gayakono dispossession and honor the ongoing connection of Gayakono people, past and present, to these lands and waters. And this land acknowledgement was reviewed and approved by the traditional Gayakono leadership. I don't know the official land acknowledgement for Binghamton, but I would like to echo that we honor the Gayakono people and other people for whom those lands are their traditional homelands. Second, and importantly, I want to thank you all for being here, and a shout out to the many people who have supported this effort. We'll have a full acknowledgement at the end of this webinar, but I really appreciate all of the support that we've received here from the Department of City and Regional Planning, AAP, Cornell, and many other organizations and people who have been involved. So if you can go to the next slide, Sandy. As I mentioned before, I direct the Just Places Lab. This is a platform for research and creative action. It's focused on how communities care for, preserve, adapt, repair, reuse, remember, and reimagine cities and places. And if you could go to the next slide. CURTA-Y, which you'll be hearing about, was incubated in the Just Places Lab. It originated by a student, dreamed up by a student, Najee Abdul Jalil, and then over the course of the last 3 years, it's really evolved into a really wonderful program with lots of youth and Cornell students involved. It's led by August Guba, who is a second-year student here at Cornell and started in the program. We're involved in a lot of other research projects and work, including being one of the founding co-partners of CROWD. And I just want to mention also there is a fantastic video that was produced by students in my class and Binghamton and Vestal High School students last year. We won't be showing that this time, but I encourage you to watch that at your leisure. So I'm thrilled to introduce you to some of the high school students involved in CURTA-Y this year, and some of them were involved last year. That includes Samantha, Caroline, Jordan, and Miranda. And the students in my course that are operating the youth program, Bethany, Halani, Kritika, Sandy, and Franklin. Some of the high school students involved this year could not make it to this webinar. That's Hunt, Helen, and Anaya from Vestal and Binghamton High School students in August as well. So I'm sure you're anxious to hear more directly from the high school students and Cornell students involved in CURTA-Y, so I'm going to turn things over to Franklin Berry.
Going next slide, Sandy. Thank you very much. Um, so real quick to go over the agenda for today, I'll be talking again, explaining a little bit more about CURTA-Y. Then we'll go into some vocabulary and terminology that you'll need to understand related to circularity to better understand the purpose and pitches that we'll be talking about. We worked on two proposals this year in the program, one being the LUMA proposal, and then also which has to do with trying to create a lasting program within this festival presentation, and then also writing up and proposing a circularity related and deconstruction related resolution for the City of Binghamton to adopt. And then after that, we will go into Q&A. Next slide, Sandy. So as Professor Minner was explaining earlier, CURTA-Y is a program started by Cornell students, led by Cornell students, dedicated to working with high school students in the Binghamton region. The Cornell University students guide the high school students into reimagining and rethinking their downtown areas and cities, um, mostly around the themes of circularity and encouraging deconstruction practices. The program's been operating for about 3 years now, and has done projects ranging from films creating awareness for deconstruction buildings or buildings that are slated for demolition to reimagining structures and what could be replaced inside of them. Next slide, Sandy. Um, we did about four in-person workshops this year at the Phelps Mansion Museum in Binghamton, where we guided the high school students in creating the LUMA proposal and the deconstruction resolution. You can keep going through the images, Sandy. Um, After our four workshops and several other Zooms, we did a final presentation in Binghamton with community members, city council members, and State Senator Leah Webb. Um, Also, some of the images you're seeing here are from the digital scrapbook created, which has some more information about the program and pictures of the different locations we visited. Also, shout out to the Binghamton Planning Department. Gave us a lovely tour of downtown Binghamton and showed us some of the locations that we'll be talking about later today. And I believe I will be passing it on to my fellow university student, Bethany, who will be explaining a little bit more about circularity.
Yes, thank you, Franklin. Next slide, please. So yeah, thank you all for coming. My name is Bethany Jarrett. I'm a Cornell student working with CURTA-Y as well. And I have a little audience participation for you all today. I know we're on Zoom, but if you all could raise your hands in your rooms or on the Zoom chat or in the chat, however you feel most comfortable. I'd really love to know, has anybody here ever worn their mom's or sister's clothing, found something in their kitchen drawer that ended up being really useful, or just had something old that they turned into something new? Seeing a lot of hands, this is great. So if you have, this means that you've already engaged in the practice of circularity in your daily lives. So circularity is one of the most prominent guiding terms we use to direct our work this semester. And it simply means designing systems where resources are kept in use for as long as possible, instead of being taken, used once, and thrown away. And it's the opposite of the take, make, waste linear model, which is commonly used. And so in our workshop this semester, we really wanted to think about how we can implement the idea of circularity with reduction, reuse, and recycling, and all of those key terms that we think about when we think about turning something old into something new, and implementing that in terms of the built environment, especially in Binghamton. So this semester, all of our projects were geared towards emphasizing how to create circularity, reduce, reuse, recycling, reduce waste, and ultimately having a circular economy that benefits all the residents of Binghamton. And We wanted to figure out not only how to hypothesize ways for this to occur, but also how to communicate it with the general public. Next slide, please, Sandy. So one of the ways we endeavored to do this is through creating a proposal for a future LUMA Community Arts Festival. If you're not from Binghamton, you may not be familiar with LUMA as it is located in the city, but Franklin will tell us a little bit more about that later. But overall, it is a visual arts mechanism for displaying stories to the entire community. And we chose to focus on creating a project that communicates circularity through LUMA because we believe that visual storytelling is a powerful way to engage the public, raise awareness, and communicate our vision to a broader audience. And by combining compelling imagery about circularity with meaningful design, we hope celebrate the beauty of preservation, reduce, reusing, recycling, and circularity, and to inspire the community to overall just imagine a brighter and more sustainable future for Binghamton. Now I'm going to pass it back over to Franklin to talk a little bit more specifically about what our
Next slide, Sandy. Thank you. All right. So if you're not from Binghamton, maybe you're not familiar with this event, LUMA. Um, it's one of the most like new age exciting events I've honestly ever been to. Um, Binghamton shuts down their downtown area, closes off the roads, and make sure that all the lights are turned off in the downtown area, including street lights, and all of the building owners and property owners also participate and voluntarily turn off their lights as well. They set up giant projectors in the downtown area and then shoot films on the facades of buildings. So they're combining filmmaking and architecture. They do about 6 to 8 films that range from 5 to 10 minutes each. So there's like crowds of, ranging from, 400 to like 1,500 people all in the downtown area at once, migrating between the films, enjoying the experiences. And the event lasts like around an hour and a half. So it's not too big of a commitment. Next slide, please. One of the reasons we, as a program, decided to angle for the LUMA proposal is that we wanted to have a more lasting impact with our work this year so that the students' work could definitely, continue working long after they're done. LUMA as a event right now has 6 to 8 films that are kind of random. There's no major themes going on with the films that are projected onto the buildings. So we came up with a proposal that at least one of the 6 to 8 films be themed around the history of the building that's being shot on and covering themes of circularity and deconstruction. So every year, people going to the event can look forward to learning a little bit more about Binghamton and a specific building that they walk by every day. And it's an opportunity to continue to educate the masses on what circularity is and deconstruction, showing that, these buildings, what it took to build them, the carbon that they embody, being able to go into the past and enjoy the buildings in what used to be their peak, and then being able to enjoy the buildings in the future with what they could possibly become. I will now pass it off to Kritika.
Thank you, Franklin. Hello, everyone. My name is Kritika Oli. I am a senior majoring in urban planning at Cornell's undergrad URS program. And thank you so much for joining us today. So for this slide, I'm going to walk through the process behind our projection concept. And so we organize the work across 10 weeks, and each stage builds off of the last one to make sure that our final projection is both grounded, intentional, and realistic. So we'll start with research and discovery. And in these first 2 weeks, our goal was to understand the building deeply. So we chose a vacant structure and collected its history, old photographs, and any community memories connected to it. This step is important because it helps us see the building beyond its current neglected state. And instead of treating it as a waste, we start to frame it as a cultural asset. The stories and visuals we gather here directly shape how the projection will feel and what themes it will highlight. So next is concept development. And during this phase, we outlined the narrative arc for the projection. So we broke it into three parts: the building's past purpose, its present abandonment, and its imagined circular future. So this gives us a clear structure to work with and makes the transformation feel more intentional. It also helps the audience understand the bigger message, which is how circularity can reframe spaces that people have just written off. Then we move on to design execution, which is the most visually intensive part of the process. And here's when we really had our high school students take the lead and help design concepts, storyboards, and ideas on how to bring their vision to life. The idea is to make circularity visible and intuitive, almost like watching a rebirth take place on the facade. And this phase also involved experimenting with colors, textures, and pacings to make sure that the visuals match the emotional tone that we're aiming for. So in weeks 8 and 9, we focused on finalizing and refining the work. So with the help of the local students and community members, adding their voices and visual elements, this collaboration gives the final piece of authenticity and a sense of community authorship. During this phase, we also organized our material into a neater package. So things like concept statements, draft storyboard frames, and a sustainability message. So the goal here is to pull everything together in a way that communicates the idea clearly and shows how the projection connects back to circularity and preservation. And finally, here we're in week 10, where everything came together. We organized the full package, the concept statement, storyboard frames, and a brief sustainability message explaining why it matters. So the final delivery shows LUMA, not just what the projection looks like, but also its civic value, how it connects to preservation, circularity, and community storytelling. It really demonstrates the idea as both meaningful and practical. So overall, the 10-week process took us from a very early research to a fully developed projection concept, which honors the building's past, reimagines its future, and communicates circularity in a way that people can really see and connect with. So next, I'll pass it on to one of our high schoolers, Miranda.
Thank you very much, Kritika. And so essentially, our different high school groups, as we were previously discussing, we were kind of separated into groups in order to make sure that we could be as efficient as possible with our research process. And so the team that I was on was our history team, and I was working with Anaya, who's not here today, but we worked very closely together to get historical evidence about two specific buildings that we decided to focus on, which were the Stone Opera House and the State Street parking garage, or a parking garage that's in the heart of downtown Binghamton. And so really the process in getting our information regarded going through online archives, going through archives at the Broome County Historical Society, kind of trying to see if there was anything we could find in City Council, and really using various different resources to ultimately come up with as much information as possible to make sure our design outlines were as thorough as possible. And so from that, what we found was with the Stone Opera House, we really found something that was built as a heart or a place for a true sense of community that was allowed to deteriorate over time. So as you can see, in 1892, it was opened. It was built by Charles M. Stone in the Romanesque style. And essentially, it was really just a hub for art for not just our region or the southern tier, but for the entirety of central New York. It was at its peak. It actually hosted even presidential candidate Theodore Roosevelt during his early 20th century campaign. And so it was really a place of art and was held in high esteem by the community surrounding it. But going into the mid 1930s, it started to deteriorate following a fire. And from there, it kind of just continued to deteriorate in prestige as well as physically until its ultimate closing in the 1970s. And so from there, since the 1970s, there hasn't really been much action with the Stone Opera House. It was created in 2012. It was made into a historical site, or titled a historical site by the city. But other than that, it has not really
the investment hasn't been there to turn it into a hub for community as it was in the past. And so with our research, we really wanted to make it such that through a LUMA presentation and potentially having a LUMA animation on the Stone Opera House, we could once again let the community see what it was and what it can be again. And it was kind of that same theme for the parking garage. As you can see, it was opened June 1970, about the time that the Stone Opera House closed. It was in the brutalist style. It was very much a thriving place to bring business into downtown Binghamton. But over time, it started to really deteriorate due to imbalances with its structure, imbalances with the materials it was made with, and ultimately resulting in what we see today, which are talks to have it demolished. And with both of these structures, what we found through our research were two places that could have really been made to stay great for Binghamton, but unfortunately, due to being allowed to decay, they haven't really been able to see their highest potential. So we really want to see them kind of be that way again, or have their materials used in a way that can once again benefit our community. And then I think we can go to the next slide. And then as you can see here, regarding a case study preservation, when it comes to the Stone Opera House, our idea is not necessarily deconstruction as it would be for the State Street parking garage, but rather an act of actual preservation. So we see the Stone Opera House as a place that can either be once again made into a place for the arts for the community, or somehow it could be repurposed for maybe a place of community refuge in terms of potentially YMCA or Boys and Girls Club-esque sort of community stronghold. But regardless of what it turns into, we would really like to see it once again be functional for its community, regardless of the format that it's in. And so with that being said, I think we have the next slide. And then with the state parking garage, our idea regarding this was either adaptive reuse or deconstruction as alternatives to demolition. So as I was stating previously, current discussions as to what's going to happen to the State Street parking garage have really surrounded demolition and kind of getting rid of the materials as a whole. But our idea was more so being able to repurpose the materials that the State Street parking garage contains, just because of how much material it does contain. And so with that, we were thinking that it could maybe potentially be used for creating new structures for the community, or it could be used as being sold to other places in central New York that would bring in a lot of revenue for Binghamton as a whole. And so those were our ideas regarding structures or a more purposeful way of rebuilding life, or giving the materials of the State Street parking garage life once again. And from here, I'll pass it on to my fellow peers from the high school, Caroline and her partner, Hunt.
Hi, I'm Caroline, and I'm a junior at Binghamton High School. I was on the graphics team, so I have created a simple storyboard of how the Stone Opera House's story could be told through a LUMA presentation. So before I started drawing, I gathered photos and information about the building and its history. I decided that I wanted to carry a theme of how this beautiful building could rise again throughout the story. For my first drawing, I showed the basic structure of the building while it was in its prime condition. Lights could illuminate the building's prominent features, such as the windows and bricks. Next, transition through the main window to show the interior of the building, show audience members dressed formally, watching the most notable performances that have happened at the Stone Opera House in chronological order. Then turn the stage into a movie screen and enlarge it to transition to the next phase. Show the exterior of the building, now in stormy weather, boarded up and in disrepair. For the final phase, project nicer weather as boards come off the windows and the building is restored to its former glory with a newfound purpose. Next slide, please. Thank you. So my co-researcher, Hunt, created this storyboard promoting deconstruction for the State Street parking garage. And this proposed projection would follow a single brick's lifespan from the time it was manufactured to the time when it was in a building, and then ends with how it could be reused in a different building. Next slide, please.
So, developed from the amazing storyboard drafts from our co-researchers, we're sharing two finalized projection concepts that explore the memory reuse and the future materials in Binghamton. The first is called The Second Act, The Building Still Remembers for the Stone Opera House. This projection builds the building back to life by revealing how it once looked and felt. We've restored the glowing marquee, historic textures, and soft silhouettes of the arriving crowds. The past performers appear only as outlines, more like memories than reenactments, to honor the opera house's long history. As the piece unfolds, the windows breathe, warming and brightening as if the activity has returned inside. At its heart, the concept sends a circularity message that the opera house isn't something to tear down, but a cultural container that still holds value. We end with the words reuse is continuity, history is not waste. Because the site is already zoned for cultural use, this projection helps the community imagine preservation as a realistic and meaningful path forward. Next slide, please. Our second projection is called Materials Have Futures Too, Reimagining the State Street Garage. We start by outlining the garage as a structural diagram, highlighting the beams, columns, and slabs to show the existing building as a collection of valuable materials. These components then detach and transform into new community uses, such as the open-air market stalls, flea markets, art studios, seating terraces, and sheltered bike or bus areas. Silhouettes move through these imagined spaces to make the possibilities feel real and usable. The message here is that the garage isn't just waste, it's a material bank. Demolition becomes intentional deconstruction, where pieces are reclaimed and reintegrated into the city. The projection closes with transformation is also preservation, because the garage sits along a busy transit corridor near students and residents. It's a prime opportunity to show how systematic reuse can spark new urban life. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Melanie. So, as we think about the future of our project and bringing it from idea into reality, we know it may seem like a bit of a lofty goal or unconventional to think about preserving, reusing, or adapting a building or its materials when we're typically accustomed to just seeing typical demolition, waste, reuse, and landfilling, things of that nature. However, we believe that these plans can feasibly be enacted into real life, and there are many researchers, groups, and professionals who are currently pursuing the same goals that we are and have created frameworks that we can use to truly realize our plans into action. For the Stone Opera House and Strand Theater, one framework that we considered that helped us to understand how to bring our idea into reality is this framework created by the Just Places Lab that shows the most preferred, which is building maintenance, preservation, and refurbishment, the most circular option, to at the bottom, demolition and landfilling, which, as we've known, is our least preferred option. For the Stone Opera House, we think it is very possible to get to a place where building maintenance, preservation, and refurbishment are a top priority so that, as our high schoolers just said in their beautiful slides, the historical, cultural, and economic significance of the Stone Opera House to the city of Binghamton can continue to live on, and the building can be supplemented, repaired, and otherwise helped so that its structure does not go unnoticed and dilapidated in the present day, and its historical significance can continue on into the future, and no waste will come from this building. Next slide, please. For the State Street parking garage, using the same framework, our idea is a little bit different. For this parking garage, we envision a mix of multiple different methods of creating circularity in order to increase the benefits of this structure to the Binghamton community. One of these is the idea of utilizing the concrete that is already present in the State Street parking garage for other buildings and structures in the Binghamton area, whether that be a new business, a new building, or even a sidewalk, wall, or structure throughout the community. This is an example of material reuse and salvage, which means taking this material and reusing it in another purpose, adaptive reuse in the same sense, and recycling, where even though, yes, there will be some deconstruction, there will still be great potential for circularity. Next slide, please. Further cementing our idea for the State Street parking garage, many researchers have already begun pursuing ideas similar to the goals we hope to achieve through this adaptive reuse and circular deconstruction. For example, the Recreate project is a group of researchers in the European Union who are currently working to discover how used concrete elements, similar to the ones present in the State Street garage, can be deconstructed without damaging them to be reused in new buildings, and turn this process into a profitable business which will continue funneling economic growth into Binghamton. All this to say, there are many ways in which our project and circularity can feasibly and in reality become a part of the everyday life of the Binghamton community and continue the life of these buildings and structures long after their construction and beyond. Next.
Oh, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Samantha, and I'm a junior at Binghamton High School. I'm explaining why our film category is beneficial to members of our community here in Binghamton. But I want to mention LUMA first. Binghamton's LUMA is a time where people from around the globe can showcase their view of our world. People make mesmerizing optical illusions on buildings, beautiful illustrations of picturesque sceneries, and colorful memories that remain embedded in our thoughts. Imagine our message: preserving the materials we have on this earth for future generations to come, projection mapped during LUMA. This would further LUMA's vision of incorporating collective community during a day of festivities. Having a LUMA showcasing the rich history of Binghamton's buildings informs the emerging youth about the once great city of Binghamton. It shows them the global impact of life without preservation, of a life without repurposing materials, and informs us about a pressing issue in our city: buildings currently rotting away. Our LUMA showcasing aims at uniting the community of Greater Binghamton to face a battle of maintaining our home. I now welcome Jordan Prince to speak about our resolution. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Samantha, and thank you everyone for being here today. My name is Jordan Prince. I'm currently a junior at Binghamton High School, and I will be introducing the Deconstruction and Reuse Resolution. Today, we're looking at a resolution that would move our city into a smarter, cleaner, and more responsible way of dealing with old buildings. This policy supports deconstruction, which means carefully taking buildings apart so materials, architectural features, and even cultural pieces can be reused. Right now, most buildings just get demolished, and everything lands in that landfill. And considering that buildings account for almost 40% of global greenhouse gas emissions and more than half of all resource extraction, demolition without recovery only increases the horrible effect on of these problems. But we choose deconstruction because we keep valuable materials in circulation, reduce waste, and avoid the carbon emissions that come from manufacturing brand new buildings. There's also a major public health benefit. Fast, aggressive demolition can release toxins like asbestos or plant dust into surrounding neighborhoods. Deconstruction is much more controlled, which helps keep people safer within our community. And one of the biggest advantages is what it does for the local economy. Deconstruction takes skill, time, and craftsmanship. It creates jobs, support reuse centers, and helps grow green industries. It strengthens our economy while also keeping materials out of the landfill. This resolution also supports a circular economy, one where we conserve resources, reduce environmental harm, and protect the cultural heritage that makes our community unique. For all of these reasons, I am proud to support this resolution, and I hope that you will help us move toward a more sustainable and looking forward to a great future. Now, next slide, please. I would, next slide again, sorry. Can you go back to the last one? Sorry. I'd like to give Samantha the stand to give her 2-minute argument.
Hello again, everyone. My name is Samantha, and I'm a junior at Binghamton High School. I have just one request for you. Look around our great city of Binghamton. What do you think a tourist would see? Maybe they would see the vibrant carousels, which our city is the capital of, by the way. Or maybe they would catch sight of our beautiful historic buildings like the Security Mutual Tower, which was built in 1905 by a hardworking carpenter named Truman Lacey. Or perhaps even the very building that we had our previous presentation in. We had it in Phelps Mansion, and it was constructed in 1870. These buildings are stone and steel testaments to a time where Binghamton wasn't just on the map, we were the map. When we look away from the glitz and glamour of Binghamton, we can now see flagrant vagrancy and a state of ruin of other historic and relatively newer buildings. On Washington Street, in the middle of the city, sits a once glorious 26-bedroom mansion built in 1960 that has been in a state of disrepair with broken tiles, fallen bricks, and vacancy for more than a decade. As a group, we have focused on the Masonic Temple on Main Street, which was founded in 1922, and it was once a divine hub for people to engage and improve the city of Binghamton. But now it's a husk of its former self, and it is left to collect dust, graffiti, and plywood boards. These buildings show the other side of the city of Binghamton, a decadent and dilapidated side that is in desperate need of restoration. But we can change that picture. The alternative is circularity. It's a revitalizing idea to improve our historic city and improve the state of our buildings. It is a closed-loop system where everything has a next use, everything has value, and the absolute minimum is thrown away to landfills. There are many more reasons why an urbanized region like Binghamton should implement circular policies. This wouldn't just take one day, or even a year. This would take the unity of our community to achieve a goal that suits all. I now welcome Caroline to present her argument.
Thank you, Samantha. If the United States waste habits continue, we will have more irreversible damage to the environment than we can handle by 2100. Our primary source of this damage is landfills and their carbon emissions. In 2022, U.S. landfills emitted 119.8 million metric tons of CO2 into the atmosphere. 40% of this waste was from construction. An estimated 70 to 95% of this construction waste could be reused. Only about 30% actually is. We have a huge environmental problem on our hands, but the solution is right in front of us. The City of Binghamton must implement circular initiatives to the construction industry, as it would save not only our environment but also our economy. In order to reuse materials from buildings, they must be carefully deconstructed rather than haphazardly demolished. This results in a greater demand for human construction workers instead of machinery. Implementing circularity in the built environment in the City of Binghamton specifically is important because it aligns with our goals. It would help create local jobs to reduce our unemployment rate, help New York State reach their goal of an 80% reduction in greenhouse gas by 2050, and create a beautified and healthier city. The reality is, we have 75 years until our Earth is too far gone for us to fix it. We have 75 years to make a change. We don't have time to wait for the federal government to force us to reform our wasteful habits. We must start with creating a brighter Binghamton to eventually create a brighter world. Thank you. I would now like to introduce Miranda Chiguma.
Thank you, Caroline. Hello, everyone. My name is Miranda Chiguma, and Binghamton's population is one uniquely defined by its spirit for variability. We proudly hold the title as the most diverse area within Broome County. Our school district is one whose students represent every corner of the world, and even the diversity of our geographic makeup, being composed of both the city's awe-inducing buildings to the town's vast cornfields, epitomizes the spirit of diversity within Binghamton. However, there is one aspect in which this spirit wavers in such a way that disadvantages the entirety of Binghamton's community: the lack of diversity in the way we construct our community. Just as Binghamton is characterized by its diversity, it's also characterized by its rampant urban decay and blight. While we have plenty of time discussing these buildings in theory, they also equal our cohort's reality. Being a Binghamton High School student, the downtown area surrounding my school and beyond is riddled with buildings such as the 103-year-old Masonic Temple, 147-year-old Stone Opera House, and more, whose grand potential stands in stark contrast with their current state. For years, the first thing Binghamton High School students see when they're looking outside through the school's windows is former housing that's rotting, and yet in the same proximity exist well-maintained and curated buildings for secondary students. The lacking of amenities and structures for Binghamton's community only results in disillusionment and isolation for our residents. Yet, through the adoption of our proposal, hope can be found for Binghamton residents. Binghamton buildings such as the Masonic Temple, Stone Opera House, and more will be able to be repurposed for the use of our residents as third places and centers of community refuge. And the materials from buildings that are beyond repair will be collected and reused in a manner that prioritizes the health and well-being of our citizens. Improvements that my colleagues' quantitative measurements corroborate. Granted, fitting for the topic of variability, while our proposal goes beyond typical paths, the willingness to go beyond the status quo is what allowed for the growth of Binghamton during the Gilded Age, and it will allow for our growth looking into the future. Thus, with the adoption of our proposal, we can ensure that projects prioritizing deconstruction, preservation, and salvation become the expectation rather than the exception, and ensure that from now on, when our students look outside their windows, they see centers of community and productivity that are the result of circular practices, walking together towards a greener and brighter future. Thank you very much.
One of the biggest reasons this resolution matters is the economic opportunity it can create. Traditional demolition is fast, but relies mostly on machines, which means it doesn't create many jobs. Deconstruction is completely different. It's hands-on, skilled work that requires people to carefully dismantle buildings, sort materials, and prepare them for reuse. In places where deconstruction policies have been adopted, it has created 2 to 3 more jobs in the community than demolition for projects of the same size. These aren't just short-term jobs either. Deconstruction creates pathways for people to develop real valuable skills: carpentry, material assessment, architectural salvage, and green building practices. These skills are in growing demand as more communities focus on sustainability and climate consensus construction. The economy's impact goes even further. Salvage materials like old lumber, bricks, fixtures, and hardware hold real value. When those materials are reused, sold, or donated, they support local small businesses, reuse centers, and contractors. Instead of paying to dump materials into landfills, we keep them circulating through the local economy and create new opportunities for commerce and growth. This resolution also helps make deconstruction easier to adopt by offering incentives like lower permit fees and faster approval times. That leads to more projects, more workforce demand, and more economic activity. In short, supporting deconstruction isn't just good for the environment, it's a smart economic decision. It creates jobs, strengthens small businesses, and keeps valuable resources in use instead of wasting them. Next slide, please. Before we finish, I just want to thank everyone who helped fund CURTA-Y and everyone who has joined this meeting today. Your support and your participation truly matter, and I appreciate you for being here.
Right. Thank you. And I hope we can give everyone a virtual round of applause, all of the presenters. And at this point, we'd like to open things up for any questions. And feel free to put questions in the chat, or if you'd like to raise your hand and ask a question, that would be great. Yes, Susan Holland from
I had a question about the LUMA. Great presentation, by the way. Thank you. I've been wanting to see this, so I'm glad and couldn't make it. I think last month, so very exciting. Question for you about LUMA, and maybe no one knows yet. What's the process for applying and putting your ideas together? And maybe I missed it. I'm sorry. There was a couple things going on my desk, but And I've never gone, so I'm really excited to hear that you're trying to get in there. So,
I can take this one. Um, Currently, the application is pretty standard. On the Luma website, they have uh, five different tiers of applications,
okay.
from like the 6 to 8 films, which are their like large scale projections. How that process works right now is just that filmmakers will send in like a pitch and like maybe like a small storyboard or trailer of some kind of presentation in as an application, and then Luma will get back to them by a certain date after reviewing all of the proposals and let filmmakers know which ones they're most interested in seeing like a second round or a finalized, we love your idea and we're giving you the green light to, produce your film for the
Yeah.
event. Then they have mid-sized films and small-scale films, which range from even shorter films to like almost GIF-like animations that are like really quick and repetitive back and forth. Um, and then they have a like 2D non-animation projection space where they put up local art and single shot stills that people produce and send in. The last two tiers are related to like a small art installation space that they'll put in like public space during the event, or a local business tier where like a local shop owner can open their space up during the event and then project certain films in their own spaces while it's going on. There isn't a formal process to write what we're proposing, which is why we've contacted the directors of Luma directly
Mhm.
to propose this.
Great.
There's no standard for like proposing that there should be specifically a new theme for the event. Because as
Okay.
I stated in the presentation, how Luma operates is they don't really have themes or guidelines for the
Yeah.
films. Anyone can submit any form of application.
That would be interesting too, to see what comes in, right? But that's very cool. Good luck with everything. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll just tag on. We'll be talking to Anna Warfield, who is actually a Cornell art alum, who is involved in Luma to get her advice in moving forward in perhaps a couple of different ways to submit these ideas. Yes, Sophie.
Oh, thank you so much, everyone. So inspiring, so interesting. Um, I have one uh um and really I would vote yes. You guys argued that so effectively. I can imagine the power of that when you go and present that in Binghamton. Yeah, that was so good. I have one thought on the Luma. The Luma, first of all, I'd love to come to the Luma Festival. It sounds so amazing. I was wondering in the theater project, you have lovely historical images, but what about images and existing music groups in Binghamton? Imagining who would be performing in this wonderfully rehabilitated, renovated space. I can imagine that being a really powerful future thinking thread of your Luma storyboard and your film. Um, yeah, and I thought, Kritika, you articulated that you know for the group, you articulated the stages like this is a felt emotional way of making reuse real. So drawing on all that amazing existing activity in Binghamton and embodying them in the Luma vision of it, I could imagine that being beautiful and powerful. But I just really want to say thank you, Jenny. I'm so glad I came to listen. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks for your comments and great idea around the music. And I also want to give a shout out to Shannon Rudek, who's a first year MRP student who's been volunteering with CURTA-Y this semester and is also studying the Opera House and has some ideas there as well. And I'm just looking into the chat. Thank you so much for the generous comments. That's wonderful. I see a question from Madeline Kelly. Thank you all. Has Crowd ever done work in Syracuse or does it plan to? That's an excellent question. And I might see if Gretchen wants to respond to that. I know we've had people from the community and actually students and community leaders from Syracuse who attend crowd meetings. But
Thanks, Jenny. Thanks for your question, Madeline. I'll just say really quickly, as Jenny said, we have a number of crowd participants who are located in Syracuse, and I know there are a number of initiatives underway in terms of considering reuse facilities for building materials, as well as a number of students both at Syracuse University and SUNY ESF who have done a number of projects around adaptive reuse and, considering possible reuse of some of the buildings, which, like the students here from Binghamton have presented, are underused or in a state of disrepair. So if you're interested, then if you're interested to hear more or get involved with the crowd from a Syracuse perspective, why don't you stick your email in the chat and we can try to connect. But thanks for that question.
Yeah, looks like we have one more question in the chat related to how we chose the Stone Opera House and the parking garage. And if there was any debate on, whether how we choose which project we thought should be repurposed or deconstructed. I'd say two things on that. We actually considered during the process about 6 different sites to possibly choose from. And we identified the Opera House and the garage, particularly because one, the Opera House is smack dab in the center of downtown Binghamton, and actually during this year's LUMA event that the university students went to, and I imagine some of the Binghamton High School students were there as well. Um, they actually projected on the building right across from the Opera House during the event. So it was kind of staring us right in the face that they were projecting on this building right across the street, which had a nicer facade already, and how this literal historic landmark where Theodore Roosevelt spoke, and many different famous performers had come across the country to perform at, was in disrepair right behind the giant projector. So we thought of just moving that across the street due to its rich cultural history. We thought it would be the best building in terms of geographic location, already fitting well within the event, and then also having the most opportunity to inspire the most pride in the local Binghamton community around the building that they probably walk by every day and thought, that used to be a movie theater in the 70s. So that, they would attach more sentimental value to the building and be more encouraged to see it restored due to its historic landmark status. The reason we went with the parking garage for deconstruction is because the garage is actually already slated for demolition. So it's an instant, opportunity to display something on the parking garage and show literally what the process, that people are going to see happen in 2 to 3 years, and what, the difference is between those materials just being destroyed and sent to a landfill, and how those materials could be deconstructed and reused in other creative and vibrant ways.
Right. And just a quick shout out to Juliet Burling, who is the director of planning at the City of Binghamton. She had led us on a tour early on of some opportunity sites and was very interested in the circularity and reuse work, and came up with so many different ideas. It was really wonderful. And thank you, Tracy Morgenstern, joining us from Bellevue, Washington. Thank you for listening and for your kind comments. And I think we're about out of time. And I think we've covered all of the questions and comments. I want to thank everyone again for coming and listening and engaging with this work. We really appreciate it. And it's been a real pleasure to work with Binghamton and Vestal High School students over the course of the semester, and our Cornell students involved in CURTA-Y. It's been a real journey, and I feel like I've learned from each of you, and it's very inspiring. I hope that we can continue to move forward with these ideas. Thank you.